What if the real test for future peacekeepers wasn't about weapons or treaties, but about whether they could keep a single seed alive in a place built entirely from metal and deadlines? Today, in nice today, as you settle in and let the day slide a little further away, hold that question with me for a moment. If you were given one seed from home on a station that has almost forgotten what life feels like, what would you actually do with it? Because on Dreth Station, every cadet is handed that exact assignment. One tiny seed, a checklist, and a quiet message. Care in small things prevents large disorders. Most of them let their seeds dry out in plastic cups and learn to fake the forms. But one cadet, Ravi Aonquo, holds his seed and feels everything wrong with that ritual. He isn't interested in a token plant on a shelf. He starts looking for something the station has tried to bury, an old, sealed hydroponic bay called Base 7, and the chance to turn a forgotten training room into the first real forest in space. The station thought care could fit inside a checklist. Every cadet on Dreth Station got a single seed from home. They were told to watch it, water it, and log its status every week. There were forms for this, charts, deadlines. There was almost nothing alive on the station, so most seeds sat in dry cups on metal shelves until they shrank, cracked, and were quietly thrown away. The logs were still filled out. Life had been stewarded. Ravi Aonquo held his seed in his hand and felt how wrong that was. He didn't want a miracle plant in a metal room. He wanted a place where life could actually live. On a station built to stop wars, he was about to build a forest. Dreth Station ran on timing and metal. Lights brightened at 06:00 and dimmed at 2200. Doors slid open with smooth hisses. Cadets moved along wide halls in neat lines, boots on the floor in the same steady beat. The air tasted clean but flat, like it had been washed too many times. Every surface shone. Silver rails, dark display screens. The only colors came from uniforms and blinking status lights. Green almost did not exist here. Ravi always noticed that. His eyes looked for green, the way some people listened for music from home. He had grown up in Lagos, then Houston, near small gardens, on balconies and wild grass that broke through cracks in old pavement. Even when a place was worn down, something was always growing there. On Dreth Station, nothing pushed through anything. The hall outside Cadet Block C smelled faintly of recycled citrus. The cleaning drones used the same scent everywhere. They zipped past on small tracks near the ceiling, wiping away dust that hardly had time to settle. Cadet Aonquo, report to Ritual Chamber 12, the soft station voice said above him. Stewardship assignment. Ravi adjusted his gray training jacket and turned toward the lift. Stewardship assignment. The phrase sounded important. It was printed in bold letters in the Academy Handbook between weapons safety and conflict simulation ethics inside the lift. Screens showed the daily motto in large type. Care in small things prevents large disasters. He had read it 100 times. Most cadets joked about it, but it hooked into a quiet place in his mind, the same place that held his grandmother's voice. "Plant for people you will never meet," she used to say, pressing his fingers into wet soil on their narrow balcony. Her hair had smelled like smoke and hibiscus. "You may never see the fruit. That is not the point." The lift doors opened onto a short corridor. Ritual Chamber 12 was a small round room with a curved bench along the wall and a single counter in the center. Bright light poured down from above, a bit too harsh for comfort. A thin officer with silver hair and a tablet stood behind the counter. "Cadet Aonquo, Ravi," she said, eyes flicking over the data in front of her. "Human. Origin. Earth. Soul system. Welcome to your stewardship ritual." There were already several cadets inside, sitting or leaning against the wall. A tall, blue-scaled Verati, arms folded, a sleepy human from Europa Station. On the counter lay a smooth metal tray with dozens of tiny labeled capsules. The officer picked up a small clear vial with a code stamped along the side. "Your assigned seed," she said, holding it out. "Origin, Earth. West African mix, drought-tolerant variety. Contained in stasis. Instructions are in your personal packet. Do you accept responsibility for this life object?" Ravi took the vial. Inside it, pressed against the plastic, sat a single dark seed the size of a grain of rice. It did not look like much, but his chest tightened as he held it. "I accept," he said. "Good." The officer tapped her tablet. "You will maintain weekly growth logs, hydration logs, and behavioral reflections. Minimum 10 centimeters growth by end of first term, or documentation explaining failure. Remember, Cadet, this ritual exists to teach long-term care. It is not symbolic. It is practical." Behind him, the blue-scaled Varathi let out a quiet sigh. "Practical," the Varathi muttered in their own language. The translator band on their arm turned it into flat standard. "On a station with no soil." Of course, the Talon beside them gave a short laugh. Ravi turned the vial in his fingers. "Excuse me, officer," he said. "Where is the growing space?" She looked up. "Growing space for the seeds," he said. "Hydroponic racks, sun lamps, soil trays. Is there a shared bay?" Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Cadet, each participant manages their own seed. Guidelines allow for standard nutrient gel, which you can requisition in limited quantity. Light from your room panels will be sufficient for small-scale germination." "In a cup," the sleepy Europa cadet said. "It's a cup assignment. You put it in a cup, stare at it, log that it does nothing, and later you write about acceptance." A few cadets snickered. The officer cleared her throat. "Outcome depends on effort. Stewardship relies on discipline. Next, discipline, not conditions," he repeated in his head. That did not sound like anything he had learned from real plants. Out in the corridor, the group broke apart. The Varathi adjusted their translator and started down the hall. The Talon trotted to keep up. "You're new," the Talon said to Ravi. "Name's Pell. You're going to love this assignment." It was hard to tell if there was sarcasm in their high, light voice. "You get to watch things die slowly while filling out forms." Very educational. Ravi glanced at the vial in his hand. "Do your people do this ritual too?" "Our people send seedlings down mountain cliffs to see which survive wins," Pell said. "We learn from how they bend. That is a ritual." They waved their own vial. "This is a checkbox." They headed toward Cadet Block C together. As they walked, they passed open doorways. Inside, rooms were neat and square, beds folded up into walls, decks folded down. Storage units gleamed. On many shelves sat clear cups, jars, or small trays. Most held dry, shriveled pieces of plant. Some had a thin green sprout leaning weakly toward a white ceiling panel. A few cups had no seed at all, just crusted nutrient gel. In one room, a cadet from the Cache species, a being with soft gray skin and four-fingered hands, stared at a limp stem. They looked up as Ravi passed. "You're still alive?" they asked. "Hasn't started yet," Ravi said. He lifted the vial. "Still sleeping." "Keep it that way," the Cache cadet replied. "As soon as it wakes, everything works against it here." Ravi paused. "What do you use for light?" "Room panel," they said. "Same as everyone. The old hydro bays are sealed. Food comes from synthesis tanks. No waste. No dirt." They said, "Dirt, like a strange luxury." Pell tugged at Ravi's sleeve. "Come on, inspection in 10. In his own small room, Ravi set the vial gently on his desk. The walls glowed with a soft ambient light. The air hummed and whispered through vents. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked at the single seed. Plant for people you will never meet. He had promised his grandmother he would bring something green to the stars. At the time, he thought it would be a job on a terraforming crew or a long-term survey mission on a half-formed world, not a tiny ritual on a clean station that did not want dirt. He opened his tablet and searched the station index. Hydroponic, facilities, Surrent. The results were short. Food production, sealed, automated, restricted to staff. Research bays, closed for renovation. Emergency algae reserves. Classified. He switched to achieved. Old files scrolled up. Test bays, experimental gardens, training labs. Base 7, hydroponic training bay status. Mothballed. His finger hovered over the entry. He opened it, a floor plan appeared. Long trays, pipelines, tall tanks along the wall, environmental controls, moisture spread charts, light patterns. A note at the bottom read, "Access suspended after central food synthesis upgrades. Entry by clearance only." Ravi sat back. There was soil, or something close to it, somewhere on this station. There was a place that had once held plants, a place built to let them grow. His heartbeat picked up, slow but firm. He tapped the request icon. Requesting observation, SS Base 7 training. Purpose. The form asked for a reason. He typed Stewardship Ritual support. Need to understand system conditions. He hit send. Less than an hour later, a polite denial arrived. Request denied. Training mediative met by Corintic materials. He stared at the words. Training objective met. The objective was not growth. The objective was to watch something try to grow in the wrong place and call that care. The next day, after drills, he sent another request. This time, he cited personal development and systems study. Denied. That evening, lying in bed while station lights dimmed to simulated night, he turned the vial between his fingers and listened to the faint hum of air in the walls. The station ran on cycles. Air, water, power, schedules. Everything was a system. People were part of it. Cadets were pushed through routines that trained them to think in lines and orders, not in living loops. But he could feel it, like a shape, just under the surface. If you shifted a few links, the whole thing could support life differently. He sent a third request. This time he attached a note, respectfully requesting observation-only access to Base 7 to improve understanding of environmental systems. Goal: apply knowledge to long-term conflict prevention through better resource design. He did not know if anyone would care about that argument. It was honest. That was enough. In the morning, a different response arrived. Request for observation. Excess. Base 7 escalated to commandant level. Pending review. His stomach flipped. Commandant level. For a closed, dusty room. He closed his eyes, imagined his grandmother's wrinkled hands smoothing soil in a cracked pot, and decided to wait. He would not rush the seed from its vial. Not yet. Not until he knew where to place it. Care, he thought, is not about guarding a thing in your hand. It is about shaping the world around it so it can live. Dreth Station did not know that. Yet. The message arrived between simulation drills. Ravi sat in a cramped sim pod, helmet still warm against his curls, when his tablet vibrated against his arm. The pod hatch slid open. Air from the corridor washed in. Cool, filtered, carrying the faint citrus scent. Again, he blinked at the bright overhead strips, pulled off the helmet, and checked the alert. ACSS granted. Base 7 to OBS variation only. Supervising officer. Commandant Yara. Conditions attached. Report to docking ring E4 1800 hours. His mouth went dry. Pell leaned into his pod opening, furs still flattened from their own helmet. You look like you just got conscripted to fight a black hole, they said. Base 7 access, Ravi said. Quietly, Pell's eyes widened. Hydro Training Bay, that place actually exists. I thought it was a myth told by older cadets who like dirt too much. Observation only, Ravi said. And Commandant Yara is supervising. Pell whistled through sharp teeth. Big eyes are on you. Don't fall into a nutrient tank in front of her. It might go into the record. At 1755, Ravi stood at docking ring E4. The ring was quieter than the central corridors. Here, the windows widened into long strips, showing the black spread of space. Stars hung like white dust. Trade routes glowed faintly. Thin threads that ships followed between worlds. He spotted Commandant Yara at once. She stood by a sealed hatch, marked base. 7 Restricted. Her hair was clipped close, streaked with gray. At the temples, her uniform was a deeper shade than other officers, with a simple silver band at the collar. Her face looked carved from concentration lines, but her dark eyes were sharp and clear. "Cadet Aonquo," she said as he approached. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but carried an edge of tired authority. "You sent 3 requests and a systems essay for this." "Yes, Commandant," Ravi said. "Thank you for reviewing them." She studied his face. Why does a human cadet focused on peacekeeping systems care about an old hydro bay that has not run in 20 years? Ravi glanced at the hatch, then back at her. "Because the station's stewardship ritual is set up to fail," he said. He felt heat rise in his neck, but he kept his tone steady. "We are told to care for life in a place that does not support life. We follow the rule, but not the reality. I think that trains a kind of blindness that will hurt us later." Her eyebrow lifted. He took a slow breath. "If we are meant to prevent conflicts over resources and environments, we should understand real living systems, not just simulations. Not just simulations. Base 7 was built for that. It is going to waste." Silence sat between them for a few seconds. No adjustments, no moving parts. "You requested that." "Why? Because I need to see the system before I touch it," he said. Like a medic reading a body scan before surgery, the corner of her mouth moved, almost a smile. "Careful words, Cadet." She placed her palm on the access panel. The hatch lock shifted with a heavy clank. "Station registers this bay as mothballed," she said. "Life support minimal, power limited. You will be accompanied by an internal monitored drone. If you attempt to activate dormant equipment without proper requisition, access is revoked." "I understand," Ravi said. The hatch slid open. The air inside base 7 had a smell he had not known he missed. It was faint, dry, and dusty. But under that lay another note. Old water, old plants, minerals that had been wet once. The smell of something that had lived and then stopped, but not completely. The bay stretched out in front of him, larger than he expected. Long rectangular beds ran down the center in 2 rows, each divided into shallow troughs. Above them, empty frame supports waited for light rigs that were gone. Thick pipes ran along the walls and ceiling, branching into smaller lines that disappeared into the beds. Dust lay on everything, a soft gray layer. No leaves, no stems. Just the skeleton of a growing place. Bones, he thought. These are bones of a forest. Commandant Yara watched him as he stepped inside. A small spherical drone floated in behind them, lens glowing blue. "How does it look?" she asked. "Like it remembers," he said without thinking. Her head tilted slightly. He moved along the nearest bed, fingertips hovering just over the surface. The dust broke apart under his breath, showing dull, cracked material. Underneath, it was not soil, but a porous artificial mix meant to hold water and nutrients. In some corners, thin traces of dried roots clung to fragments of it. He crouched to look closer. In the gaps between chunks of growth medium, tiny flecks of something darker lingered. He imagined the sound of water once flowing through the pipes, dripping into these beds, feeding rows of plants that stretched up toward gentle light. "You ran food here?" he asked. "Training crops," Yara said. "When the station was young, we assumed cadets would need to understand supply from basics. Then, synthesis, tech improved." She gestured at the beds. These became redundant. Someone closed the hatch and turned off everything that moved. He asked. She gave a small shrug. There were other priorities. War memory was still loud. Arguments about fresh vegetables did not stand long in that sound. Her gaze swept the room. Now we argue about different things. The bay was quiet, but not the cold quiet of his dorm room. Sound here was thick, even without plants. The slight buzz of emergency lights, the low murmur of minimal airflow, the tiny clicks from the monitor drone. "How many cadets know this place exists?" he asked. "A few who read too deeply in archived files," she said. "Fewer who have seen it. You are the first this term." He turned to face her. "May I study the layout? Pipe paths, tank sizes, lighting plans." "You may look," she said. "Observation only." As agreed, he spent the next hour walking every row. He traced the main pipe from a big dry tank at the far end, through valves caked in dust, to junctions that led to each bed. He noted where control panels sat dark under plastic covers. He found old sensors half buried in debris. His tablet filled with scribbled diagrams and notes. At the back of the bay, behind a stack of covered crates, he found a glass panel with faded writing. Base 7 Training Slog. Grow together. Stay together. Names filled the space below, written in many scripts. Human letters. Curved cache loops. Sharp Varathi lines. Different dates. Some older than his grandparents. He tried to imagine the sound of those cadets working here. Arguments over pH levels instead of battle tactics. Laughter over spilled water instead of failed simulations. "Commandant," he said quietly, "was this bay only for food training? Or was it also for team building?" Her eyes followed his to the old sign. For a moment, the tired lines around her mouth deepened. "We used to think real cooperation came from doing something real together," she said, "not just sharing scores." She let out a slow breath, but schedules filled, simulations grew more complex. Time for slow work seemed like a luxury. He turned around fully. "This isn't a luxury," he said. "This is what we are supposed to be doing. Learning how systems keep people alive, for centuries, not just how to end fights in days. The monitor drone clicked softly, recording. Commandant Yara folded her arms. What would you do with this Bay Cadet if you could do more than look? Ravi felt careful words rise, but he let himself answer with the simple truth. I would wake it up, he said. Not as a food factory, as a grow. A place where cadets bring their seeds together, instead of hiding them in separate cups, so they see that life needs partners, not isolation. What if no one cares? She asked. Some will care for reasons that are not about plants, he said. A Varathi who wants to measure humidity. A Talon who likes fixing pipes. A human who misses the sound of leaves. He lowered his voice. You cannot force people to care about an idea, but you can build a place where caring feels natural. She studied him again, very still. Observation access is all I can give you without drawing attention, she said at last. Vice Commandant Hesh would shut this down as soon as he saw your plans. He values clear lines and closed systems. I am not asking for open valves today, Ravi said, only time. To understand what is broken. So when I file for repairs, I can be exact. Her lips pressed together, hiding another, almost smile. I will allow a small extension, she said. The next 30 days. Observation only remains in effect. Observation only remains in effect. If anything changes in the system, I lose the ability to defend this as harmless. Ravi bowed his head. Thank you, Commandant. On his way out, he brushed his hand along the edge of a dry bed. Dust clung to his skin in a thin gray film. It felt like ash, but under it he sensed chance. The first evening he came back alone. He mapped every valve. He checked which light supports were still strong enough to hold new panels. He tested floor strength where tanks had sat. He measured air movement with a simple handheld sensor. The second evening, Pell showed up, standing in the hatch with their fur pushed against the cooler bay air. You are late for being boring, they said. You skipped rec time 4 days in a row. I had to make sure you were not replaced by a rulebook. Ravi looked up from a half-disassembled sensor. How did you get access? Pell held up a band. Humidity research exemption, they said proudly. Our species needs a narrow moisture range. Medical said, I may monitor it in any occupied area. I told them I felt dry when you were gone. That was not a lie. They stepped inside, nose twitching. It smells old, they said, but good old. Ravi smiled. Want to help me look at the water lines? Pell's ears perked. Do you mean take things apart? Only the broken things, he said. The third evening, a tall Varathi cadet appeared in the doorway. Base 7, they called, voice low and slightly musical. Here Ravi answered from behind a tank. The Varathi ducked under a pipe, scales catching faint light. I am Solen, they said. Commandant Yara mentioned you needed someone who understands mineral balances. She suggested voluntary field credit. Welcome, Ravi said. We are still in the stare at dust phase. Solon looked around, their wide black eyes thoughtful. Dust is data, they said. It tells you what used to be here. Over the next week, more cadets came. Benna, a human from Callisto with a knack for pressure systems, arrived carrying a small toolkit. "Heard you have leaks," she said, "even though no water yet ran here. I see things that want to leak before they do." Oren, a case cadet with a love for color, walked slowly down the central aisle, hands trailing just above the beds. "This light is wrong," they said softly. "If we ever turn it back on, it should not feel like an interrogation room." They should not feel like an interrogation room. Maya, a quiet Martian-born human, showed up without warning and sat in a corner with a tablet, quietly reading old station logs no one else had time for. "I can get you the original planting patterns," she said. "They tried some interesting mixes before they shut this down." Ravi had not planned to invite them. He had only mentioned Base 7 in small ways, in casual talks over meals or while stretching after drills. "The station has an old hydro bay," he might say. "Would be interesting to see how it was built." He never said, "Help me fix it." Still, they came. At first, they did what was allowed. They observed. Pell mapped air moisture in different corners, frowning at the dry readings. Solon scraped tiny samples from pipes and beds. Analyzing mineral traces, Benna ran non-contact tests on valves, muttering about age and stress points. Yeah, Oren sketched simple layouts, already thinking where light and shadow could fall in calming ways. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they worked in near silence, each busy with their own task. The bay started to feel less like a tomb and more like a room waiting for people to remember it. After 10 days, Ravi stood by the big dry tank and stared at a sealed inspection cap. His fingers itched to turn it. "No rule against tapping," Benna said from under a pipe. She knocked gently along the tank's side, listening, mostly empty. "Bit of residue. You'd need a flush before you send anything new through here." "How bad are the lines?" Ravi asked. She slid out, grease on her cheek from some old fitting. "Some joints are frozen, some cracked. Nothing we couldn't patch if we had approval, which we don't. What if we ran a test with air instead of water?" Pell asked, ears angling forward. "No liquid, no growing. That would still be observation. Air is already part of the environment." Ravi thought about Commandant Yara's warning. "If anything changes in the system, I lose the ability to defend this as harmless." Air was already moving through the bay in small ways. Was pushing a bit more through old pipes, a change, absolutely. Could he argue it was structural assessment? He looked at each face around him. They were not here for rebellion. Pell wanted to feel humidity. Benna loved solving problems in metal. Solon was curious about old minerals. Oren cared about making spaces feel gentle. Maya wanted to see if the station had once been softer than it was now. He also thought of his seed, still waiting in its vial on his desk. "We test one line," he said slowly. Lowest pressure path, no water. We log everything. If something fails, we seal it. If Commandant Yara asks, we show her the data and let her decide if this place deserves real repairs. They moved like a small, quiet unit. Pell traced the easiest air route from the main tank through a side branch. Benna checked every joint along that path, tightening what she could without tools that would draw attention. Solon placed tiny temporary sensors at key points to watch for pressure changes. Ravi tied the monitor drone into their network so it would record too. He wanted no secrets here, only proof. When they were ready, everyone stepped back. The bay felt more still than usual, starting low-pressure air. Ravi said. His finger hovered over the manual control on a small portable pump they had legally checked out for equipment cleaning. He pressed it. The pump hummed. Air pinked into the dry tank, then into the pipe. For a breath, nothing more happened. Then a faint hiss spread along the wall. Movement, they said softly. Small puffs of dust drifted from some joints as old particles shook loose. Benna's eyes went bright. Hold steady, she said. Nothing breaking yet. Solon watched sensor readings. Pressure within safe range. We are waking nothing but spiders. There are no spiders on Dreth, Pell said. Sadly, the sound changed from a hiss to a gentle, uneven sigh as air reached deeper into the network. Then from above, a sudden, sharp spray. All heads snapped up. A hairline crack in a high joint had opened, and a fine stream of stale, chalky dust burst out, falling in a little white cloud. Off, Benna barked. Ravi hit the control. The pump shut down. The dust settled on the bed below, leaving a pale patch. No one spoke for a second. Then Pell laughed once. A quick, bright sound. It leaks, they said. Eyes shining. It still leaks. It remembers how to move. Solon coughed lightly in the powder. This is good, they said. Weakness revealed at low stress. Now we know where to reinforce first. Ravi wiped dust from his cheek, feeling a grin pull at his mouth. A failure had happened, a tiny, safe failure. The system had shown them its pain points. It had responded. We broke the rule, he said quietly, but we did it in the way systems need, gently, with care. Maya, who had been standing near the old log panel, raised her tablet. I found something, she said. They gathered around as she showed them a decades-old note from a former Base 17 lead, training log, year 217. They told us to keep things perfect. We decided instead to find every way this bay could fail while the stakes were small. Every leak we fixed here is a flood we prevent planetside. Ravi read the line twice. Looks like we are following tradition, he said. He looked around at the dusty beds, the pipes that had just sighed with old air, the faces of cadets who had come for their own reasons and now shared this strange, quiet task. Base 7 was not a grove yet, but for the first time since he had stepped on Dreth Station, he felt like he was standing inside something that could grow, not just plants, team. Not just plants, a system, a different way of teaching care. He brushed his fingers along the nearest bed, leaving a clean streak through the dust. Tomorrow, he said, we start planning how to make this place breathe, for real. Pel's fur rose softly in a pleased shiver. About time, they said. Outside, beyond the station's metal skin, stars burned in patient silence. Inside Bay 7, a dead training bay had just taken its first, small, uneven breath. Ravi stared at the supply catalog on his tablet and rubbed his eyes. Rows and rows of items scrolled past. Repair foam, sensor kits, training drones, nutrient blocks, gravity belts. Everything had a code, a cost, and a list of who could ask for it. He had been searching for 40 minutes and still had not found what he really needed. Seeds that could live in hard places. Pel dropped onto the bench across from him in the cadet mess. The room buzzed with low talk and the clink of utensils on trays. The air smelled faintly of synthetic stew and bread that had never seen fire. You look like you want to fight the menu, Pel said, biting into their nutrient bar. I'm looking for terraform seed crates, Ravi said. The kind they use to start new ecologies on dry worlds. I know the Peacekeeping Corps keeps them on some stations. Pel swallowed and leaned in. And you plan to, what? Plant a new world inside Base 7? Not a whole world, Ravi said. Just a small, balanced system. Enough to keep itself alive. Enough to teach us. Pel flicked open their own tablet. Try personal development projects, they said. My cousin on Talon Station got a whole climbing wall that way. Ravi frowned. Climbing walls and terraform seeds are not the same. Both are tools to build character, Pel said, in a mock-serious tone. The forms do not care what actually happens, as long as you tie it to growth. Ravi typed personal development into the search bar. A new section opened. Personal development projects are. The list was strange. Eve. Hi. Musical instruments. Art supplies. Extra logic puzzles. Microgravity sports gear. At the very bottom, a line made his heart jump. Ecology kits mini. Closed size stem. Training includes limited terraform seed mix, nutrient solution, and microfauna. For educational use only. Requires officer sponsor. He tapped the info icon. The description appeared, designed to teach cadets about long-term system balance. Supports mixed plant life in sealed or semi-sealed environments. Not for large-scale terraforming. Found them, he said. Pel grinned. Of course, they hid them in the soft skills section. There was a request button. Reason for request. Required. Ravi thought for a moment, then began to type. Proposal. Convert mothballed hydroponic bay Base 7 into a controlled educational grove using ecology training kits. Goal. Teach interspecies cadet teams about long-term system balance, resource sharing, and slow cooperation. This supports peacekeeping mission by building skills in patience, repair, and non-destructive conflict with environments. He sent it to Commandant Yara with a simple note, requesting sponsorship for personal development project Base 7. He did not expect a fast answer. Yara always weighed things, but the reply came after evening drills, while he and Benna were tracing pipe paths on the bay wall, probed with limits. He opened it. You are granted access to 3-3 Ecology, kits for Base 7 under the Personal Development Clause. Conditions: all installations are reversible. No structural changes without further approval. Health and safety standards for all species must be met. You will submit weekly reports on team activities and system stability. Vice Commandant Hesh is not to be given reason to inspect this project prematurely. Do not mistake this for full support. It is a trial. Make it hard to argue against. Commandant Yara, Ravi smiled. We have seeds, he said. Benna wiped dust from her hands. You got them? How many? 3 kits, he said. Not much, but enough to start a pattern. Pell, who had been balancing on a dry tank to test airflow, nearly slipped. Real seeds? They squeaked. Not sad little gesture seeds. Real terraform mix, Ravi said. Hardy plants meant to build systems on empty worlds. Solon stepped closer, eyes bright. What types? We won't know until they arrive, Ravi admitted. These kits are mixed. Drought-tolerant species, humidity lovers, nitrogen fixers, ground covers. We'll have to identify them as they grow. Oren laughed softly. Mystery plants, they said. I like it. Maya held up her tablet. I have old maps of Base 7S planting zones, she said. They used to group by function, not by species. Shade makers with shade lovers. Deep feeders with shallow ones. We could do something like that. Ravi nodded. Exactly. We are not going to plant rows of the same thing. We are going to build small communities. The ecology kits arrived 2 days later in dull gray crates that looked like all the others. A supply bot dropped them at the hatch of Base 7, with no comment. To the station, this was just another small project, like building a meditation corner or a practice arena. To Ravi, it felt like the first rain on a dry plain. They gathered around the crates. Ravi, Pell, Benna, Solon, Oren, Maya, and 2 newer cadets, who had been drawn in by quiet talk. Vesk, a tall insect-like being from a low-gravity world, and Leon, a slim human from a ring colony who had grown up on algae farms. Open them, Pal begged. Ravi popped the first seal. Inside, neat compartments held small packets of seeds, pouches of dried nutrient mix, tiny vials of bacteria cultures, and a thick manual. He lifted the manual and set it aside. Well, read it, he said. But first, let's sort. They laid packets out on the cleanest table they had. Each had a code and a short description. Here, Solon said, tapping a label. Legume type, nitrogen fixer, thrives in low nutrient mix. Nitrogen fixers first, Ravi said. They feed everything else. Maya pulled 3 more similar packets into a row. Pell picked up a packet that showed a plant with broad, flat leaves. Shade maker, they read. High transpiration, raises humidity. Pell hugged it to their chest. My favorite, they said. Benna found a tiny seed mix labeled ground cover, root mat, erosion control. Vesk tapped a picture of spiky stalks made for harsh sun and thin air. Drought frame species, Vesk clicked in their precise voice, can handle dry corners. And here, Leon said, fast growers. They shoot up early, then die back and feed the rest. Ravi spread the packets into groups. Okay, he said, we are not building a garden for looks. We are building a system, so we think in roles we need. Builders, nitrogen fixers to enrich the medium, protectors, shade plants and humidity raisers, covers ground spreaders to stop erosion, pioneers, hard species that can live in poor spots and hold space, short-lived feeders, plants that grow fast, then break down into nutrients. Each bed will be a mix of those in different amounts depending on the light and air there. Oren nodded, their eyes already scanning the racks where new lights would go. Then Ill need to shape the light to match, they said. Soft here, strong there. Not just flat panels, Benna unrolled a schematic she had drawn of the water network. I can keep a slow drip in each bed if we can convince the station to give us a bit more water, she said. No floods, just a pulse now and then. Pell, Ravi said, you become our living humidity sensor. Help us figure where the damp pockets should be. Pell's ears twitched. Gladly, my species does not like dry corners. I will make sure the plants do not either. What about our ritual seeds? Maya asked. The ones from our home worlds? Ravi looked around at them. Each carried a small vial or pouch these days. More carefully now than when they had first been handed out. The seeds had gone from burdens to something like quiet promises. We do not drop them into bare medium. We plant them when the grove can hold them. Otherwise, we are just repeating the same failed ritual. No one argued. For several days, Base 7 became a planning room. They marked out zones in the beds with simple colored loops, blue tags for wetter spots near where water would enter, yellow for drier ends, green for areas under future shade, white for places where light would be strong. Maya, Leon, and Solon sat with both the old logs and the new sea chart, matching functions. In the past, Maya said, they made a mistake. Too many heavy feeders, not enough fixers. Crops pulled more than the system could give. Well, reverse that, Leon said. At first, we plant more supporters than users. It will look empty. People will think nothing is happening. But the medium will be changing. Quiet work, Solon agreed. The best kind. Benna and Vesk worked on the water lines. The station would not give them full flow yet, but it did agree to send a small experimental trickle through one side of the bay for evaluation. Benna grinned when she saw the allotment numbers. This is enough to run a pulse, she said. Slow cycles each day. The kit's manuals say that too much steady water rots roots in closed systems. Pulses are better, like a heartbeat. They patched cracks with repair foam, replaced a few brittle joints with spare pieces borrowed from surplus stores. and installed simple manual shutoffs in case something went wrong. Oren scrounged old training lights from a storage area and spent hours rewiring them. When they were done, the rigs above the beds no longer blasted flat, harsh white. Instead, they gave off a gentle, warm tone in some places, a cooler one in others, arranged in a rough pattern that felt almost like sunlight through branches. On the day they were ready to plant, Commandant Yara visited. She stepped through the hatch and stopped. The bay was still mostly dust and dry beds, but the energy in it had changed. Colored tags fluttered slightly in the air. Pipes gleamed where Benna had cleaned and patched them. Light rigs hung in careful lines, still off, waiting. Cadets from 6 species stood around the central beds with seed packets in their hands. Yara's gaze moved slowly from the patched pipes to the riot of colored notes on the wall, to the quiet faces turned toward her. "Explain," she said simply. Ravi stepped forward. "We used the ecology kits you approved," he said. "We are placing species based on function. Here," he pointed, "are the nitrogen fixers. Here are the shade makers and humidity raisers. The ground covers will go here. The pioneers and drought-tolerant plants will take the edges." Yara walked along the row, eyes sharp. "This is more than a hobby," she said. "Yes," Ravi answered. "It is training for systems thinking, for patience, for working with limits." Pell lifted their humidity reader. "We have mapped moisture needs for every cadet species here," they said. "We are designing spaces that are safe for us and for the plants." Benna tapped the pipe diagrams. "We run low water pulses," she said. "No big drains on station resources. If something leaks, we have shutoffs right here." Solon showed mineral charts on a tablet. Oren pointed out how certain zones would be softer on eyes that were used to forests or caves. Leon added, "We timed planting with our schedules. Care shifts will rotate, so no one person is responsible for everything. That reduces burnout and mistakes." Yara listened, saying little. When they finished, she looked at Ravi. "On paper," she said, "this is still a personal development project. In practice, it is a group experiment on a closed environment inside a military training station, with dozens of species present." "Yes, Commandant." Ravi said. "What will you do?" she asked. "If everything dies?" He met her gaze. "We will log why," he said. "We will learn from it. Then we will try again better." "Why is that different from the ritual in your dorm rooms?" she asked. Ravi took a breath. "In the dorm ritual," he said, "failure teaches that care does not matter because the world stays the same no matter what we do. Here, failure would teach that the world reacts, that systems can change, that effort shapes conditions, not just feelings. That is a lesson peacekeepers need." Silence held the room for a few long seconds. Then Yara nodded once. "Plant," she said. They began with the unseen work. In each bed, they mixed the dry medium with tiny packets of bacteria and fungi from the kits. The powder was almost invisible, but Leon explained that these microforms would help roots pull in nutrients and share them. "They are like quiet messengers," Leon said. They carry what plants cannot move alone. Pell wrinkled their nose as dust filled the air. It smells alive already, they said, even though nothing had sprouted yet. Next came the nitrogen fixers. Ravi held a small pod in his hand. Inside were several peas-like seeds, smooth and hard. These, Solon said, will dig deep. They drink very little but give back much. They planted the fixers in loose patterns, not straight lines. Ravi knelt in a corner and pressed seeds into the medium. Plant for people you will never meet, his grandmother's voice said in his memory. He covered each seed gently. Round those, they scattered ground covers, tiny, almost dust-like seeds that would spread roots quickly and hold the medium in place. At the edges and in the driest zones, they pushed in the tough pioneer seeds. When, near where water would drip most often, they dropped shade plant seeds that would later raise humidity for Pell and for species that needed damp air. It took hours. They moved slowly, talking in low voices. Sometimes they laughed when Pell got a nose full of dust or when Benna tried to plant 3 seeds in the same hole for efficiency and got scolded by Maya. At last, all packets were empty. The beds looked almost the same as before, flat, pale, lifeless. Only the faint lines of disturbed medium showed where their hands had worked. It looks like nothing, Pell said softly. That is how first steps look, Solon replied. Ravi stood by the water control. Ready? He asked. They gathered around. He opened the valve a fraction. Far away in the wall, a pump clicked on. A soft, slow gurgle traveled through the pipes. No high sprays this time, just a gentle sound like breathing. Tiny beads of water began to push out of drip points above the beds, falling in quiet drops. The medium darkened in small spots, then lines, then patches. Pell sucked in a breath. I feel it, they said. The air is changing already, just a little. Oren switched on the new lights. Warm, soft light spread across the beds. No harsh glare, no sudden pain to sensitive eyes. It felt like morning. Ravi felt something loosen in his chest. Base 7 was no longer just bones. It was a resting animal, heart starting to beat. Days passed, nothing happened. At least, that was how it looked. The bed stayed mostly flat and brown. The only visible change was that the medium no longer puffed dust when someone walked by. It held together, faintly damp under the surface.